Tom Feeney for the invitation. Tom is a longtime colleague, mentor, friend, and I'm excited to tell you sort of what Tesla is up to, and want to start with just a brief background on our story, kind of where we are and why we do what we do, and then talk about some of this technology that seems to be very interesting to folks. So for the technical people in the back, I'm trying to advance the slide, but it's not working. So while that catches up with us, let me explain kind of where Tesla got started. And some of you have read Elon Musk's biography. One of the accurate things in that biography is his story about starting to think about electric vehicles when he was a teenager. And there's this great story, if you're an electrical engineer, or an engineer really of any type, one of the things you learn about early on is kind of the patron saint of engineering, a scientist named Nikola Tesla. Tesla was a colleague and contemporary of Thomas Edison. Edison and Tesla were both equally brilliant. Edison was much better at commercializing ideas than Tesla was. And Tesla, at about the same time that Edison was commercializing large-scale electrification, Nikola Tesla invented an incredibly efficient electric motor. He went to his investor, which was J.P. Morgan, who was supporting his work, and said, I've got this great idea for an electric motor. I think it could be the future of transportation. J.P. Morgan said, I don't believe that's a great idea. In fact, I'm going to start supporting Edison and not you. And pulled the investment from Tesla. What that one decision from one investor introduced was 130 years of a carbon-based economy and carbon pollution. You learn about that as an electric engineer and you get inspired to change the world. And that's what Tesla is about. We are all about that vision that got into Elon's head as a teenager about accelerating the world's adoption and transition to sustainable transport. That's been the mission of the company, is to bring electric vehicles to the market that don't look like a golf cart, that are actually cool, fun to drive. You may know a Tesla is the fastest production car available less than $1 million, and you can buy one for about 10% of that $1 million price point. It's also the safest, and I'm going to walk you through each one of the car features that make this special, but it all starts with this vision, and this is really pure. We feel like if somebody buys a Nissan Leaf, we win. If they buy a Chevy Volt, we win. Because each one of us is affected by this. Not only is the overall temperature of the world increasing, we all know, through global warming, but MIT did a study a couple years ago that showed that in the US, these figures hold for Europe as well, about 50,000 people annually will die of auto emissions related cancers, lung cancer. That is almost twice the number of people who will die in accidents. So if you can't relate to global warming because it's a macro large issue, like you probably as an individual can relate to getting cancer. And so we feel like that for every electric vehicle that comes on the road that takes a combustion vehicle off the road, we all win. And that's part of our mission at Tesla, is to accelerate that transition to sustainable transport. So we had a business plan to get there. And this business plan is really straightforward. It was the first blog that was put up by Tesla and by Elon. And basically it followed the rules of economics. When you start producing a complex, capital-intensive product, you start with a low-volume, high-priced vehicle, or a low-volume, high-priced product, and that was the Roadster. I met a Roadster owner this morning. We produced 2,500 of these things in Menlo Park, California, maybe the most expensive place in the world to produce cars, just off the Stanford campus. That, though, taught us how to make vehicles and got us enough cash to buy a factory, an old Toyota GM factory, and to start produce a medium high priced but medium volume vehicle, and that's the Model S. The Model S is a 7-passenger sedan that will go from 0 to 60 in less, or 0 to 100K in less than 3 seconds. It's a rocket sled. and it's really fun to drive, and it's a luxury car. And that enabled us to get enough cash to take the development platform of the Model S into the SUV market with the Model X, and now we are offering both a sedan and an SUV. And the cash from the medium price point, medium volume product gets us into a mass market product that was just mentioned. So at the end of March, we introduced the Model 3 to the world, and that is a lower priced, high volume product. So we've just marched down the cost curve, much like it happens in almost any industry. And we were blown away by the response to the Model 3. We had a little bit of a pool amongst the executive team, and we had to guess the number of reservations that we thought we'd take in the first 24 hours, first week, and first month. And I had one of the higher numbers in the pool at 135,000. You may have read that we now have close to 400,000 reservations. It is an amazing response to an electric vehicle, and it shows the mass market potential of an electric vehicle. Really interesting that a car, an electric car, it became the largest product introduction of any kind of product anywhere in the world. The debut of the iPhone was a $6 billion product in its first month. The debut of Model 3 is a $14 billion product in its first month. An amazing response to a mass market electric vehicle. And part of this is because of the technology that we put into the car, and I'll describe some of this as we go along. We've been called the most innovative company in the world, and Tesla's a wonderful place to work, but it's frenetic, it's fast-paced, it's super challenging. Because we have a very aspirational leader that puts incredible targets out in public, and then we pursue those relentlessly. So a lot of the innovation is stressful, but it's self-imposed. And so we were founded in 2003, brought the first car out in 2008, launched the Model S in 2012, launched Model X in 2015, along with autonomous driving, and started a gigafactory which will double the world's production of lithium-ion batteries. Let me say that again. That building will double the world's capacity of lithium-ion batteries. The reason we're doing that is because the battery is a significant cost component of the car, and we had to figure out a way to cut that cost in half in order to produce a vehicle that was $35,000 price point. And we couldn't find another way but to do this ourselves. So we've got, this slide is a little outdated. Tesla now has close to 15,000 employees. That number's increased to 3,000 in just a couple of months. We have 200 locations around the world. I won't spend much time on our distribution model today, but it's a very, as you probably know, unique distribution model. We have over 300 superchargers. We though, I want to say, we're the size of a mouse, and we get the attention of an elephant. We only produced 50,000 vehicles last year, at a 92 million sold worldwide. We'll produce close to 100,000 this year, so we're doubling, which is significant for any company. But we're still very small in the grand scheme of things, and we get way more publicity than we probably deserve. One of the things that we wanted to do was prove that an electric car was viable. We have just surpassed not 1 billion, but 2 billion miles driven, and saved the world now about 300 million gallons or liters of gasoline in the process. These are just a snap of our store locations. Our service centers we run ourselves at a break even. One of the things Elon said early on was if our product breaks, we shouldn't profit from the customer. So we run those at a break even, and we run our own charging network for free. And those service centers are amazing, and I'm excited to see the competition behind this wall. Because one of the things that Tom did as he was preparing me for this conference was send a video of the competition. And I sent it to our people and said, we got to do something similar to this. So we just launched what we call Torque Wars. They're happening around the world this month, and we're bringing the winners of the competition to our Fremont factory and doing what you'll see back here. So thanks, Belron, for the inspiration for that. This is Tesla worldwide in terms of the supercharger locations. So you can travel from north in the Arctic Circle, well north of Trondheim in Norway, all the way down to the southern tip of Europe. That didn't exist about 3 years ago, and now you see that footprint. We've got manufacturing facilities around the world that engineer this car from the ground up. So I want to talk about sort of some of the uniqueness in terms of the technology that we're working on. So Tesla's motor, Nikola Tesla's motor, was a really innovative product, and we've sort of modernized that. This is one of the reasons why we can run our own service centers, though. Any guesses how many moving parts there are in this motor? 2? 1. Causes great reliability. It's a very simple mechanical mechanism. That motor goes into a cabin that has achieved the highest safety ratings of any vehicle on the road. So prior to this, and this is both for the Model S and Model X, we are 5-star in every category. One of the most difficult categories is the B-pillar test, where a telephone pole is hurtled at the B-pillar of the car for a side impact test at about 40 kilometers an hour. The prior safest car, the Audi 5 Series, Q5, had a penetration of about 16 centimeters into the cabin of the car. So if you're in the driver's seat, that's a significant issue. When we were tested by these third parties, the telephone pole made it in the cabin about 3 centimeters. So significant difference. That's the second safest car to now the safest car. So your chance of fatality in a Tesla is less than half of the second safest car on the road. So safety is a very big deal to us. Part of the safety comes from where the battery is in the car. It provides great rigidity to the frame, but it's also it's purely in the center of gravity of the car. A combustion car has an engine up front which is very heavy, which changes not only the rigidity of the car, but the potential of the car to flip, and the potential of that engine to come into the cabin in a front-end collision. And we have designed all those things sort of out of the car so that it is incredibly safe. It was mentioned that we also do over-the-air updates. So this is a very cool situation for owners, in that your car actually gets better over time. So last March, we did an over-the-air software update. We made all the cars faster. We also did an over-the-air software update that made the cars have more range on the battery. Last October, we did an over-the-air software update where overnight people woke up to autonomous capabilities in their cars. It is a really exciting feature of a Tesla for an owner. But as mentioned, it causes insurers and the used car market to sort of scratch their heads, because the car gets more valuable over time. The used car market has never seen anything like that. So people that lease cars try to predict residuals, and for Teslas, they predicted a downward curve that was steeper than it actually was, because these cars get more valuable over time. It's also a very vexing problem for insurers. But for an owner, it's a great thing, and for a manufacturer, it's a great thing, because we learn from our cars every day. We learn what's going right, what's going wrong, how they're driven, and how we can improve them. And our engineers pore over that data and make the car better on a daily basis. And one of the ways they did that was with autonomy. And I know this is really interesting to this room, so I'm going to spend a little time on autonomy. Here is sort of how the Tesla sees the world. There is a camera that sees what's in front of the car. There's a lot of chip technology that processes that imagery very, very quickly to tell the car what's happening in front of the car. Then we have 16 ultrasonic sensors around the car that tell the Tesla what's happening around it. All that data gets crunched in real time to be able to allow the car to drive itself. And this is a wild experience the first time that you allow the car to take over. But over time, it's a revolutionizing experience as a driver. So I will tell you that I commute about 90% of my time under autopilot. The car is driving itself. It's a very different experience to arrive at work with an empty email box and very relaxed. The car is that good. We made a decision that's a little bit different from a lot of other folks, a decision that other folks may have made, and that was to release this technology into the market in beta form. We looked at the landscape and saw that the supermajority of mileage was driven on the highway. So we decided to introduce autonomous technology that could address this supermajority of miles driven. And it's a little easier use case to deal with. We don't have to deal with cyclists and dogs and rolling balls and things that you have to deal with on side streets. So it was an easier use case for us to develop to. But what that gave us was it gave us an opportunity to engage autonomy for the first time and gather a lot of data that would help us to address the use cases that are the edge cases on the side roads. So today we have about 1.5 million miles a day driven under autonomy in Teslas. You heard from Google yesterday. Let me just put that in context. Google just surpassed 1 million miles after a decade of autonomous research with their cars. We do a Google decade every afternoon. That data is incredibly valuable because it helps us then address how users are using the technology, some of the edge cases that we need to solve to get to full autonomy. So one of the reasons why you hear us talk about getting to full autonomy in 2 years, the ability to do that is driven off of this data that's available to us. Because the car is absorbing a lot of information, and we're absorbing that information too. So this technology doesn't rely on other cars or roadways needing sensors. It really is sensing what's happening around it, and it allows the car to drive itself, and we recommend in highway conditions. So auto steer is a piece of this. It does auto lane change, so you can turn on your signal. It'll look in terms of what's around you, and it will find a safe place to change the lane, hands-free. It does auto park, so when you're cruising through a city like Lisbon, it senses an open parking space. It signals you can press a button, and the car will park itself. It also has front and side collision warning. So what we're trying to do is make the safest car safer. One of the mantras around the group that does the development of this technology is to eliminate highway deaths. What we're trying to do is take the accident rate of cars down to the accident rate of airplanes and make it as close to zero as possible. That will fundamentally, obviously, change the industry. If the risk of collision goes to close to zero, then the premium risk that insurers can charge goes to close to zero. However, cars will still break, they'll still need maintenance, so it's a good thing to be in the glass business. Stones will still come up off of the roadway. So that there will be some fundamental changes in terms of how big the collision industry is in the world. And this is not a 15-year migration in a lot of places. This will happen much faster than is prognosticated because there is such a desire, there's such a public policy pull to get these technologies in place. And so there's a lot of activity around this from other car manufacturers as well, and we're really glad to see that. What this data looks like is typically when a car travels, you get what is on the left-hand side, which is normal navigation data. But what we're getting is high precision data. We're getting actually lane data. So a little bit like the slot cars you may have played with growing up. We get that kind of precise lane data, and we can start to see when cars are swerving around an object that may be construction. It's highly, highly valuable so that we can guide that car, potentially even without optics. So there's a lot of really interesting development that's happening for us around this area. This is a picture of the Bay Area where we're based. This is a day of driving, of Tesla driving, and you see sort of not only where the heat map of where people drive, but you see sort of the specificity of the data that we're able to gather around roadways, traffic patterns, and we're studying that data across our fleet. And the real user experience here is that you love your commute. And this is game changing. So a lot of you live in areas where you can test drive a Tesla. And if you want to experience this technology, you can experience it firsthand. It's actually one of the cornerstones of our test drive. So you can go to a Tesla location, you actually go online, you can sign up for a test drive. And when you go experience this, one of the focal points of the test drive will be autopilot. It's kind of weird to have a test drive where you're not driving, but you'll actually see this technology in action today. and you get a sense of how good it is. And we do a release just about every week that makes the technology even better as we learn from the vehicle and learn what's happening. So there's a lot of implications for the fleet as not only Teslas start to adapt this technology, but other car manufacturers do as well. There's an insurance profitability issue that's on the horizon. There's a maintenance opportunity, we think, that is really interesting. And of course, there's residual impact in terms of the value of these cars that is very different from what the industry has seen before. So one of the things that we work with several insurance partners, but we've only found a handful of insurance companies in the world that are willing to throw away their actuarial tables that look back 3 years on a standard basis and actually look at real-time data, what the car is saying, and pricing off that real-time data. It turns out that if you're driving under autopilot, your chances of getting in an accident are 50% less than if you're driving that car yourself on that same roadway. So we're already seeing dramatic impacts of safety. And that will be the public and the public policy pull for adoption of this technology, because it makes the roads a safer place, even though you're surrounded by a 5-star safety rated chassis and cabin. Your chances of even testing that safety are much lower. So that's a little bit of the Tesla story, and what I wanted to do was, in the few minutes we had left, answer questions that you might have that I haven't covered here, or maybe you want a little bit more information about kind of how we're approaching autonomy and what we're seeing. So does anybody want to be brave enough to ask the first question?
I don't know. I'm the timekeeper, and I can.
We have 3 minutes, I think, to do this. Yeah.
3 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. We have one
Where's
here.
the mic?
Yeah.
Can we have a mic, please? Over there.
And while we're waiting for the mic, I'll just repeat the question. So why don't we start with you? What's your question?
There it is.
Great.
Hi, I'm Álvaro Seguras from Autofácil Spain. I would like to know exactly more or less, what kind of data is shared between the Tesla fleet and how is transmitted to the Tesla headquarters and how is anonymized?
Yeah, it's all anonymized. So it's aggregated and anonymized before we do any analysis. So it's data that we're using to gather aggregate patterns. When a vehicle gets in an accident, though, we get specific vehicle data immediately. And so we immediately do an outbound call. So there's no extra OnStar service with a Tesla. It comes built in to your experience. So if the airbag's deploying that car, we immediately call the owner and start to respond to that owner. But when we gather data off the car, it's anonymized and aggregated.
Yeah. I have a question about this over here. You need high quality data for the autonomous driving. So where you get the data from which partners? And the second question is, do you think about the fuel cell technology?
Okay, so the fuel cell technology is interesting, and we're looking at it, but today our cars approach 500 kilometers of range, and the fuel cell technology isn't there for that. And so one of the main hurdles for buying an electric vehicle is range anxiety. And so if you can go 300 miles in a Tesla or 500K, that is a reason to buy an electric vehicle, and we didn't want to take a step back because fuel cells won't get us there at this point. In terms of where we get the data, it comes from the car. We don't buy data. So the car with the camera and the sensors can drive itself down a road that it hasn't seen before. So it's not that we need a data set to be able to drive that car. The car is creating the data set.
Also for the future, I think about the pedestrian in the city. So you need some high value data there.
Maybe. I drove the car on autopilot 2 weeks ago through central Beijing. If you've been to Beijing, you know it's crazy. Cars coming in and out. We don't have pre-existing data. The car drove just fine. So I think it's maybe a false assumption that you need data before you deploy.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to end this
No problem.
Q&A. Thank you very much,
Thank you
John
very
McNeill.
much.
Thank you very much. It sounds like working for Tesla, I have the impression. He's all excited. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our break. Before you leave, let me tell
Carlos vai agora ter com ele, vai ter uma reunião.